And Kovid will be speaking about positioning your students for Industry 4.0. A student's reflection. Why is this fascinating? Kovid Panthy is a 17-year-old entrepreneur, a professional programmer, an author, a public speaker, a content creator, and an educator. He has been running multiple business activities, one of which is Texamaj Web Pavement Limited, which aims to connect youth with entrepreneurship and technology, which again comes back to impact, something that he's known for. His mission is impact, and he's also known for his educational content across different platforms on the internet, including YouTube. If you search for him online, you see all that he's doing there. He runs a podcast show where he brings some top leaders to discuss the current scenario of entrepreneurship and youths. Our speaker today is a publisher, and he's published a book on Python programming. He currently consults and coaches individuals on Python programming and marketing. Kovid Panthy was recognized by IBM as an IBM champion in 2019. Welcome again, Kovid, and it's nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much, Esteban, for your invite. It's really a great thing to have all of you, listen to all of you. And though I was not able to be in between, but yeah, I got to hear some of the ideas and concepts. Thank you so much.
All right, COVID, that's so nice. You and I will discuss a lot about your passion, what you do, and how you were mentored by a teacher. Actually, one of the things COVID will be talking about today is about how a teacher actually mentored him into becoming what he is today. Yes, and I'm so happy. Yes, someone says, "Wow, 17-year-old." Yeah, that is it. That is
Thank you
one of
so
the
much, everyone.
yeah. That is one of the reasons he's here today to let we teachers know that we are not just doing this and it's not really coming forth. I mean, it's not really productive. We have a lot of people like COVID today that they are what they are today because of the effort of a teacher. Yes, many people are not talking about it, but I really want to appreciate COVID for saying that openly. So, COVID, before I think the first question I would like to ask from you is how did you fall in love with programming, with coding? At what age did you get into that level? Can you please share with us?
I remember when you say fall in love, I remember this time when I was a kid, like maybe I was at school level, and I used to say that my girlfriend is my computer. And that's so absurd right now. Like, like how computers are everywhere right now. With every person, there is one mobile. At the time, it does not used to be like that, right? Like, I had to have computer set up as my girlfriend for me to, actually believe that's something I love. And that's right. Like I really loved computing and computers as a whole, technology as a whole. At the time when I go back in the time, like maybe 10 years ago, let's say, like there were not that many computers, right? Like especially when it comes to internet and digitalization, it was just starting out, the starting phase of it. Though it was like already so popular or relevant in the context of USA and things like it, some developed countries. In countries like Nepal, it was not that much, so relevant. So I it happened to me at the age of something like 9, that I came across this thing called computing, because I had my brother who used to have a computer, like, which you might know, that CRT monitor, right? Like big fat monitor with like a CPU running with fan always. So it was quite like that moment, right? And that's when I was introduced with computers. I think the floppy disks were used at the time, so you can imagine when that time was. And then I came to understand this computing. I was love in computing, right? But then the programming thing came a little bit later, when I was introduced with this concept of HTML. I don't know if you guys know about HTML. It's basically a hypertext markup language, right? Like the language used to write websites, especially like skeleton of website, we can say. And I came across this thing in my computer subject in my 6th grade. And I was so interested that I was waiting for this all year across, because that was the last chapter, right? And then I came across that, and at the final stage, like, I could finally learn about programming, right? I was so excited. And then I was searching for how I can write it, and how can I can implement, because I have been always a learner of practical learning. I was always you know emphasized. And for me personally also, I have worked with practical learning more rather than theoretical, and obviously that might work to some extent, but for me personally, practical learning is what I strive for. And at that time I was searching for all these practical things that I can implement, and I never found one in that HTML chapter that I had in my book. And it was all definition, advantage, disadvantage, this and that. Then I was curious. And at the time I was not this capable of like speaking in front of people. I used to, like, I was very comfortable talking with people one to one and things like it, but when it comes to, mass speaking and speaking out in the stage and like this, uh it was something that I didn't ever do, right? And then, but then that day was like a turning point of the event. And I stood up. I don't know how. If I look back, like, it does make sense. Like, if I look back, then I remember Steve Jobs saying that you can't connect dots looking forward, but you can connect always dots looking backward, right? So it makes sense. Like, I can obviously look back and see, oh yeah, that's why I woke, like, stood up at that time. And I stood up. Everybody was looking at me as if like I had been like there for, a king has been there, so everybody is looking. I was sweating out. And I think most of you can relate with that situation. And then I asked this simple question, which was how to write HTML, to my teacher, which was the first ever question I really asked in front of the mass. And then I don't know if you guys can maybe comment or in the chat what could be her reply. Let's see some of the chats. It's interesting to look at some guesses from people. When I asked my teacher how to write HTML, what do you think she might have replied me with? What could be the answer of a teacher when a student asks her a question? Any guesses? Because it's interesting to look at some, you know, guess from people. Let's see.
I think at that age, that's may birth a kind of curiosity from the teacher, like at this age, what are you thinking? That is too far from.
I love this comment from Abigail. Sorry if my pronunciation is not correct. She might have asked me, "Are you sure?" Yes, actually yes, because like at that time, like if I compare that question with the context of overall class, I think that was not relevant, because my classmates maybe were not able to able even reach that more like point where they can think about, okay, how I can write it, because they were so focused on the grades and getting marks and like studying for the exams, right? And I think, yeah, are you sure could be a relevant question given by, sorry, answer given by a teacher. But this teacher of mine said, you will learn this in further grades, like 8, 9, 10. I was in 6. So she said in 8, 9, 10 it will be, because in curriculum, like in the books, in only in the 8, 9, 10 it is like given upwards from 8th, it is given, right? Like how we can code and write and all these things. So I was so obsessed with this idea of programming and HTML and all these things. I was so stubborn that I could not live just like that.
Hmm.
You can might be relate with this thing that I'm telling with you. For example, you have a dream, right? Like, for example, let's say I have a dream of let's say being a billionaire, let's say, right? Until you become that billionaire, the dropping the idea of becoming the billionaire would be very painful for you, right?
Hmm.
Because you are so obsessed with that idea of doing something. And that's what happened to me. Like, I was so obsessed with this idea of becoming a programmer. At the time I didn't know about programming, like becoming able to write HTML, that I could not listen to her, and I was just focused on this one thing, that is writing HTML. And I used to, this is where I got into like real thing, like real love with programming, let's say. That was the point. And then later on I had to learn somehow, so I came back to home. At that time, as I said, like internet was not relevant, even though like where only the rich people used to have internet in Nepal. So even that, like rich people's internet were like this might sound so cliche right now in this moment where we are living, where like internet speed has already like boosted up to like, I don't know, 100 GB or something per second. At that time it was 10 megabits per second, megabits, not even byte, right? And that was so slow. That was the maximum like rich people could afford that in Nepal. And yeah, and then I had to come to my home. I asked my parents that if we can join internets and things like it. That was not possible. So my mom used to, this is quite interesting, and this means a lot to me and myself as a whole, you know, because my personality is something like I am so rooted down into like where I come from, like background, right? Though I have been able to achieve something, I would not say everything, but something, because there is a lot to achieve ahead, but something maybe I have achieved. I think that comes because of my root and background, right? So
Yeah.
like what happened was, at that time my mom used to give me 5 cents. If we convert that to US dollar, maybe you can convert that to local currency also, 5 cents, which is 0.05 dollars, right? And my mom used to give this for me to, for as a bus fare, you know, like we had to take public transportation from school to home and home to school. So I was provided with this. And what I used to do was, instead of getting into bus, I used to walk from home to school, and then like save this 5 cents for 7 days. And what happened was, at the end of the week, I would have 35 cents, $0.35, and that could give me like 1 hour of cyber cafe, like time spent in cyber. And I could then use computer, do whatever. And then that's what I used to do. I would save all 7 days, and at the end of the week I would go to my nearest cyber cafe and then start learning HTML. And that's how I learned about programming and things. Like, it started with that. Did something, and slowly the internet became the thing. Yeah, and
Interesting.
that's how I started with programming.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very interesting story. And one thing I see in you is passion, and
Right.
it's that passion that has taken you to where you are today. That will actually lead me to the next question. I wanted to ask a question about the role of a teacher, and but
Mhm.
from the explanation you have given, I've been able to see that one of the things that actually helped you while starting is the role the teacher played in your life. And as a programmer now, someone that is deeply rooted in it now, that's what you do for living.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, do you see a future where programming or coding is becoming, how will I put it now, part of the core curriculum in our institution? Because the major reason of bringing this together is to talk about the future of education. Now, going back to what you do you see programming as something that will be part of the school core subjects in the future, like we have in mathematics and, for example, in Nigeria, English language? Do you see coding or programming becoming something like that in the future?
Yeah. I would say, you know, like I've been fascinated with quotes, and you know, from successful people. And I've heard this quote from Steve Jobs, that computing and programming, especially not computing but programming, is something that you have to learn no matter what you are doing. Even if you are a farmer, it's better if you know, learn coding, because coding does not just help you. Like, obviously there is no term called coding. For people who say coder, there is no term as coder or coding or something like that. It's actually programming, because like it's called code. So to code something, people who code, they are just made to be known as coder, but there is no actual like literal meaning of that. But anyways, like coding is something like everybody should learn, because it just does not just help you in like program a program, like code a program, but it helps you in overall cognitive development of yours. I had this student one, just yesterday I had this session with her. And in her school life, she had been always obsessed with cognitive development, right? Like how we develop our mind. uh, that she came into programming, and she shared that programming has helped her to, you know, really amplify that cognitive development process of her, and that has really helped in her in many other sectors like academics and her business that she's doing. So overall, I think programming can help. It's just like math, right? Like how math does not always work for engineers, right? Math works for every person. Like even for a lawyer, math works because he could think logically about some problems, and that could really help in getting maybe a client's win in the lawsuit or something like that. So I personally see that right now, even right now, it's relevant that that coding should be learned by every single individual. Doesn't matter, like it does not need to be learned like full-fledged or something like that. At least some basic idea of coding, I think that's really important. But again, now we see how this future is going towards, right? Like how the coding is going towards. It's more like digitalization online, as the first speakers, Rosario said, the augmented reality, virtual reality, things like it. It's all becoming so relevant, right? Like this is the future. Whether we agree with this fact or not, this is the future. So it's better if we get our arsenal ready for that future, right? And coding is the fundamental arsenal, fundamental weapon in the arsenal needed for the future, I think. And that's why I think even right now, this subject, coding especially, like what is happening right now is like computing is the main subject and coding is a part of it. I think that's not how it should go. Like computing is totally different thing, coding is totally different thing. That's how I view, because computing deals with more like the machine, coding deals with more like problem solving capacity of that machine. So I think we should see both at these things as two different distinctive things. It's just like saying physics and biology,
All
right?
right. Thank you so
Yeah.
thank you so much. I will ask two questions, and that will be the final for today. Number one question is the previous question I asked was more about the students, the key. Yes, the students, are they going to be learning this? Now let's go to the teacher's perspective. Now, do you feel as a teacher, I need to get, now you mentioned that coding is part of the future. So as a teacher, are you advising that we should take it as part of the skills we are going to develop ourselves in? For example, many teachers are learning about how to use virtual reality now. And I mean, VR box.
Yeah.
Are you saying something like coding also should be part of the things teachers should get involved in? Then the second question and the last question is about our children. Like I asked a question from Rosario about at what age is okay, is good for a child to start using virtual reality box. Also, as a child, you started at age 9. Do you
Yeah.
think the way you started at age 9, it's something that every child can achieve? Or what age as a professional now? I'm not talking to you now as a student, but I'm talking to you as a professional that are really gone into that, and you know what it takes to do it, to get it done. So at
Yeah.
what age do you think kids be introduced to coding or programming? Two
Yeah.
questions now.
Yeah.
Teachers and kids being introduced to programming.
Cool. So I would say the question that you asked is a very good question. I think it's very relevant also right now, because as we can see, the whole thing going towards digitalization, online things, is like our teachers required to learn about coding and things like it. I would say it's very relative. It's not general and specific that I can like say okay, yes, because I think for me personally, I'm not a full-time coder, like developer, right? I have a company which is a tech company which does all these websites, marketing, things like it. I have been also into marketing things. I also create content on YouTube. So I have multiple different things. So I would not say that I have been a developer anywhere in my life, but I was keen in this concept of programming that I made this my into my roots, right? As I said, like I think programming, if someone asks me like, okay, what are your key skills, I would still have programming in my pocket, because that is what helped me to learn all the things. For example, I would like to share one example. This interesting story of mine. I was into this for example, like you were doing this conference event. We were also doing this event 2 years back in 2019 from our company, and this was a international event on youth entrepreneurship and technology. That's what we say as YET, Yet conference. and we were doing this conference. And I mean, maybe most of people don't know this, that actually I have been also into music and other things also, like not predominant into like business industry, like the industry itself, but more like other parts of, arts and things like it. So I had been into all these things. I have been into art paintings and all these things also. And at that time, like when we were doing this conference, we had to create our websites, we had to create our apps. For that, my skills helped. Though I had hired people for doing that, I could still do some check and balance on that, right? And second thing was, we had to create this theme song for this conference. So my vocal skills and music skills also came into play. Though I didn't sing for it, I could still guide people on that, or see assess the people, right? That also helped. So other parts also came to the play. But what I wanted to say is like, the whole thing about that conference was connecting, and connecting things, right? So I think personally every skill can connect. So like it is very beneficial that you learn anything, like anything comes into the play. That's what I've been a believer of, like learn whatever comes in your hand, right? So because like just recently I started learning flutes. Though I don't tell myself that much into music industry, I still try to learn everything that comes to mind, because I think everything helps at the end, right? Every skills helps at the end. So I would say, if you have time and if you have this energy and effort to learn coding and do something with it, obviously it will be helpful. I'm like guaranteeing that it will be helpful, because that's the future we are talking about, right? But I think for teachers, I think that's not a compulsion, but that should be out of curiosity and learning. What do we call this, like out of this curiosity to learn, right? So I think that should be the main region of learning. So if that is, then I think everybody should learn it. And I would come back to this Steve Jobs quote, that he said that computing should be learned by everyone, even if he's a farmer or not. Now coming back to another question that you shared, um, at what age like a person should start into coding? Like can child, like I started at the age of 9. Can a child learn at the age of 9? Well, again, like that's relative question, right? Like it relates into different aspects of life. For example, parenting, environment, everything comes into the play. But I would say, if the person has this interest, and if this person is shown that interest, I think it is very relevant to start at an early as it possible, right? Because I remember this, Elon Musk started a different school for his 5 kids, and like different school which didn't talk about academics and curriculum, but more of a skills based school, just for his students. Obviously he's a rich guy, he can do it whatever. But what I'm talking about is like what our main focus should be. Though we can't start a school for our kids, I think our main focus should be to enhance their skill set rather than enhancing their mark set, right? Because it's very much uh, relevant thing right now, because of the whole thing going on, pandemic and things like it. People are thinking about grades and mark sets and things like it. They are starting to question, are they really necessary or not? Because prior to this, they were so bound in this thought bubble that grades and mark set are everything. So grades are what dictates and assess my qualities. But now this digitalization and online learning has been so prevalent, everybody has been starting to question. And even like I would like to share this, that I had made this video of carrying a certificate, and that went viral in TikTok. So you can just think about how much relevant it is in today's context, because like it had some, I don't know, 500,000 views. So that's why I say like the grades and the things should not matter at all. So I think for a child to start, I think coding as a skill, yes. But if it comes to computing as a subject in curriculum, and assessing that as a mark in grades, I would say that's not a something that is very healthy. And just because I would like to, because the learning things are coming, and I have been listening to everybody here, and very profound thoughts, I would just like to share one thing. Can I, Steve? I have this thing called, I don't know if I have seen this. Anybody has seen this? This is like singing ball. This is called. This is very popular in Tibet, and this comes from Tibet actually. I don't know if you have seen this. It's actually a ball, nothing else, like ball of metal, ball. And we have this wooden stick. This like wooden stick, smoothen out, nothing, right? And the thing is like it's called singing ball because of a reason, because it sings. Let me show you. Can you hear that? Right? You could hear that. But let me show you one thing. Nothing, right? What I wanted to show you is like when you actually open up without any resistance, nothing is there, right? There is so much room for the reverberation and things like it, and there is so much room to learn more, right? There is so much more room to expose ourselves. That's why the vibration is going on, because there is no resistance. But at the same time, like when I put the resistance, my hands are resisting this, nothing comes out of it, right? So for us to actually learn and get something out of ourselves, I think we have to be open for things. And there is one concept that I have came up with, which is called the this is like a model of three. And the first aspect of this is knowledge, because we need some knowledge to start off, right? That would be our first process of learning. Second process, like step of in learning, is known as devotion. Because without devotion we say as like, what is devotion? It's basically opening up and accepting what it is, right? The reality. And I'm not resisting myself to get stuck in something, right? I'm open up, and I can accept everything, I can embrace everything. And the third thing is belief, and that becomes our belief, right? Like once we devote into something and learn, like have knowledge on it, then we have this belief that I can do something. And I think that's when the singing ball actually sings, right? And that's when I think human potential is unleashed at the most. So I think when it comes to learning and education and things like it, I think we should not be resisting ourselves. As I said, like every skills can matter, every things can matter. Nothing, I think nothing should resist ourselves to do something, right? And we should just open up, accept the reality, and then go for it, I think.
Thank you so much, COVID. Wow, I'm reading something now.